This episode has been brought to you by sexenhancers.com.
All right. Hello. Welcome to the Aphrodisiac podcast. I'm your host, Malcolm Jackson. This podcast is brought to you by sexenhancers.com, where they have many products of natural sexual enhancement products for men and actually one for women. Go to sexenhancers.com/SE podcast for 10% off. And let's get into this. Today, we're here with our friend Stacy. Hi, Stacy. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. All right. Our subject matter today is something that I think a lot of people would be interested in, because a lot of things that people don't know about, we just have assumptions. And today we're going to be talking about swingers and also the lifestyle of polyamorous relationships as well. So, Stacy, you've been a swinger for how long?
Pretty short time, 3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yeah.
And then how did you get into what we call the lifestyle?
I ended up, so this was post-divorce, and I was in a marriage for a very long time. So I was kind of raring to go meet some people. And ironically, I got a new job and met a gal in HR with me, and we got to be really good friends. And then like 3 months into our relationship, she's like, oh, by the way, my boyfriend and I are swingers. And I'm like, tell me about it. I'm interested in more sexual experience and that sort of thing. So her and I became really good friends, and she told me about the clubs that are in Portland, which I was shocked. I didn't know there was 3 clubs, and I guess at one time there used to be 7. And then I actually got on the face group for one of the clubs, started talking to some people, and then I met a good friend of mine now. He's a good friend, and he introduced me more into the polyamorous sides of things. So I had, during this whole time of my own journey, I had the swinger side, and then I had the polyamorous side. And for me, it's been a good journey to find out kind of where I fit into things, my own sexuality, and all of that good stuff. It's been good.
Well, because you mentioned that there's 7 clubs in Portland, I'm gonna.
Well, there used to be. Now there's only 3. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna read some statistics from September of 2022. Mm-hmm. All right. 2.4 million Americans are active swingers, which makes 1.1% of all people between 18 and 80 years old. In Delaware, 1 in every 40 people are active swingers. You are 32% more likely to be an active swinger if you are married to your partner. 31% of people who have tried swinging would be interested in trying it. Portland, Oregon is the city with the most swinger clubs, sex clubs, 39 in total. So you know about 7, but there's 39 in total. And again, this is from September 7th, 2022. So this is fairly recent. Finland is the only country where over 50% of the population finds swinging acceptable. U.S. is 4th with 46% finding it acceptable. 49% of millennials see their ideal relationship as non-monogamous. 40% of swingers are between 40 and 49 years old, almost 1 million active swingers, and almost 57.6% of swingers identify as straight, compared to 94.6% in the U.S. population. So you being in the lifestyle, as you call it, how do those statistics fit in with your experience?
Actually, they're pretty accurate, and I'm assuming the 39 clubs they're talking about is probably strip clubs as well, not specifically like swinger clubs. But yeah, especially the age category, there's a lot of people 40 to like 50 years old that are more into this that I've seen. But there's been an influx since I after the first year, and then there was COVID, so that was kind of a dip in things. But in the last year, there's been a lot of new young people and a lot of newbies, a lot of people curious. Even people I've talked to and my friends talk to, they're like, oh, I'm curious, let me check it out. So we'll take our friends sometimes. Some are like, no way, no way. But it is interesting that young people, so I'm thinking the millennial generation, definitely, they're just more open and fluid, which is where I'm at in my life, just open and fluid, like just go with the flow and just fluid to experiencing new things. So yeah, and definitely Portland. I've already known, especially about the stripper clubs that we are renowned for that. Plus Portland's weird, so
Well, keep
there
Portland weird.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Doing my part.
Yeah, yeah, you are. Why do you think there's a big influx in swinging right now?
I think because in general, society's kind of moving away from a traditional relationship. We're finding, divorce is still probably at or above 50% of all couples. And part of that is just not being monogamous. And for me, and what I've learned with this whole lifestyle is autonomy. You connect with someone and suddenly you're a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you decide to get married and you like own each other. Your autonomy, you give up your autonomy. And that's the part that really interests me, because in my marriage, I really did give up a lot of myself in the marriage to just stay in it. And at the time, it was fine.
Yeah.
But now I'm out, why should I have to give up this or give up that? And it's not just sexual things, just different things. Like for the polyamorous group especially, say you love to go hiking and your partner doesn't. Well, you meet someone, it could be male or female, that enjoys hiking, and then you develop maybe a platonic relationship, and that is kind of polyamory too, where you still love that person and your partner's not afraid of them being of the opposite sex. And sometimes that moves into a sexual relationship, but I guess we shouldn't expect our partners to give us everything we need. And that's why we have friends. I mean, obviously friends bring us different value into our relationship, but why can't it be sexual also?
Okay. Well, that's the question. And I think what's interesting about this conversation is people think about swingers and polyamorous relationships, and I think the conception is that you just go around screwing everybody. And what I know from you explaining things to me is there's rules. There's, as you say, a lifestyle. Give me some examples of being in a swinger relationship or a polyamorous relationship where the rules are there and you have to follow them. Let's start with swingers.
So it is true mostly couples swing. I was special, and I found out later that I'm a unicorn, where I'm a single bi female. So a lot of couples are really comfortable adding a female, especially at first. Mm-hmm. And so that is just an interesting dynamic. But for couples especially, the biggest thing you have is you communicate. You have to communicate all your vulnerabilities. So a lot of times they have better communications than regular couples, because if you don't communicate like, hey, I'm kind of jealous of this person, I'm not comfortable being with them, could we not this time? And it's fluid too, because one week you could go to the sex club and you're both on point and you're like, oh, we both like this same couple, and you get talking to them and you end up playing together, and we call it playing together. Mm-hmm. And maybe you go out again a week or two later and one's vibing with one person, one's not vibing with the other. You got to speak up. And my one good friend, their relationship hit the rocks because they were meeting couples and he was super attracted to the women and she was okay attracted to the guys, mm-hmm. but she wouldn't speak up. Mm. So you really learn to like communicate. And as far as rules, it's within each couple, you're like, okay, some are like no oral sex or no kissing the person, or the different terms are soft swap. Mm. So for that, you can just meet a couple and you go into a room together and you just play with your respective partners, but not switching together. Mm. Sometimes the female will, and then there's a hard swap where you go into you go in different rooms, and you have sex with the other person and you come out. So there's all kinds of variations that you need to talk to as a couple before you go. So it's always recommended to go check out a club. Don't plan on playing. Just check the vibe, see what's going on, what's happening. So just your own personal rules. And in polyamory, a lot of couples don't have like set rules. Some are open kitchen table polyamory, which means maybe it's husband and wife and they each have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and they hang out together and they enjoy each other's company, but they happen to have sex with the other partner. And then other times it's hierarchical, where it's the husband and wife, everybody's second, but sometimes they can date one person. I know a couple, she dates women and men, and then he dates other women too. So it's just your dynamic and how you feel about things, but the biggest thing is communication. And I found as a single person, it was fun fooling around, kind of sowing my oats, but then I got to a point where I actually wanted a relationship, and that's where it's trouble. Because if you're in the lifestyle and the other person isn't, how do you approach that subject? Then when you do, how is it going to be handled?
I was going to ask you about that. How is it when you're in the lifestyle of swinging and you meet someone who doesn't really know about it? Like, in your own personal experience, how has that worked out for you?
It's been difficult. Dating, if I'm casually dating, a lot of men that I'll go out with, and I mentioned swinging, and they're like, oh yeah, I want to check it out because we're casually dating. So hey, they can go have sex with someone else, or oh, you can add a woman. Yeah, that's a lot of men's fantasy.
Sure.
And so, but when I was interested in a few guys, like more, either some were totally adamantly against it, and I'm on the fence, like I really want a relationship, but I like this swinging lifestyle. Where does this fit? Do I give this up? And then they're like, well, I don't want you to give up a part of yourself. And I don't really want to, but I really want a relationship. So that was a struggle. And that's where autonomy comes in. And I don't know how I just clung. It just made sense to me. I think maybe because I was in such a long marriage that I just lost my autonomy. Because when I was younger, there's no way I would do this. I was such a jealous person. Jealous of past girlfriends, of boyfriends and stuff. It was a whole thing, and so now I'm like, no, I want each of us to be happy and enjoy it. So it's been, and how I approach it too. I'm like, I ask my friends, I'm like, do I tell them right away? Do I wait until they really get to know me? And so I've tried different things. I kind of flung a couple into the deep end, and that made them curious and stuff. But then it was hard. Yeah. And then I've been taking the slow approach too, but now I've kind of backed off, and it's my dream fantasy to be in a couple, and it's like a date night for us, but I feel like I might have to give that up for having a relationship. Why? It's very difficult to find someone who's in the lifestyle, who also has their act together for the things I want, like a stable relationship. It's really difficult as a single person.
How important is it for you to keep the swinger lifestyle and have a relationship? Like, are you saying you're being torn right now?
I'm no longer being torn. I'm at the point, I always thought if I met the man who satisfied my sexual needs, which was very important to me, I wouldn't feel like I'm giving up the lifestyle. It was more of a transition, because being in a long-term relationship is more important to me at this point. I feel like I kind of sowed my oats. Yeah, it would be fun if at some point he's like, yeah, let's check this out. But it's not necessary at this point.
Okay. I remember you told me a really interesting story. And again, I started off by saying, I think that with a lot of things in life, we hear stories about certain groups and we think things are a certain way. Mm-hmm. With swingers, we think, oh, you're just swinging and you just go around screwing everybody. You told me but with swingers, there's rules, there's protocols, there's rules. And I remember you told me a really interesting story about the guy that organized a swinging party. And I think if you could share that story with us, because it also like sets up how swingers engage with each other. You know how swinger events happen, and then how the rules work. So
Right.
can you share that story with me, please?
Yeah.
Or with
Sorry,
our
I kind
audience?
of got off on a tangent.
Yeah.
So now I remember what you're saying. Respect and consent are very big things in the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this as a single person, because if you go into a regular bar, men hit on you, they touch you, they do all kinds of things. And women cringe at this. We've done it for years, but going into the lifestyle, anytime you go to a club, anytime you go to an event, you cannot be touched by a male or female without consent. Like a woman had to say, may I kiss you? May I talk to you? And if they say no, no means no. And if they don't respect that, at clubs, they kick you out. And so we look out for each other also. And to me, that's highs for me is respect. So when someone respects that, it's so amazing. And for me to even, for women to do the same too, it's actually kind of sexy to be asked to be kissed or asked to be touched. And my first party actually, because it was kind of around COVID times, and so the clubs weren't open, but you could have private parties. And this gentleman started talking to me on Facebook, and for about 3 weeks, he's like, hey, I have these parties. It's a safe place, especially for single women as you're learning about this lifestyle. I make sure everything's consensual. You will always be safe. So I went, and it was a good party. There was probably 30 people there, and he was correct about consent and everything. And we played these games to kind of loosen up and stuff. And there was this one guy who came late. When the party begins, no phones, no cell phones. In any environment, there's no cell phones, no pictures. And the one guy came late, he kind of was off, and he was on his phone, and the host is like, hey, get off your phone, get off your phone. He kind of, and he still wouldn't, but we were still playing the games, and he's like, hey, get off your phone. So he was off in the corner. So by the end of all the games, he got his card for the game, and he stood up, and he had to get naked and go around and have the women try to excite him. And so he got naked, and he was very well hung, like, we were all like, wow. And so I'm like, but he already had been disrespectful about the phone. And then he was in one of the other ladies, she pulled a card, and then she asked him to participate. And I could tell he did what was allowed with the card, but then he pushed it. And I'm like, that's not cool. And I was sitting next to her when he was starting to come around, and just before, and I'm like, yeah, he's not super respectful. And she goes, no. But then when she saw his thing hanging out, she's like, she literally slunk in her chair, and she's like, I'm going to have that. But I was like, I don't want anything to do with him. That's just so rude. And he went around, and I wouldn't even touch him. I just and he was kind of like, what? And then went around. And so they ended up having sex later, and I was kind of watching him and up by him. And he's like, I want to have sex with you next. And I'm like, no, that's okay. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm not. That's fine. And so the party was over, and I was leaving, and he needed a ride. I mean, I felt safe with him, but he just wasn't respectful enough for me to want to have sex. And I'm like, well, how far away do you live? And he's like, 5 minutes. And he's on the way home. He's like, why didn't you have sex with me? I'm like, I don't know. I just didn't want to. You weren't very respectful. And he was really quiet. And he goes, well, you want to come up to my place for a drink? I'm like, no, I don't. And he was really persistent, which you shouldn't be. When no means no, you don't ask. But he really was pushing it. And I got to his door of his apartment complex, and he goes, well, do you want to at least come up for water? So he really, and I'm like, no, I don't. And I think he was shocked that I wouldn't have sex with him, because he's, got the big, and respect is big, especially for me, but women and even men. I've talked to men who are like, yeah, sometimes women come up on me and won't leave me alone. And so I love that culture of respect and consent. It's refreshing, actually. And I prefer to go to a club and dance and have fun. That's in the lifestyle than a regular club, because I don't want people touching me that don't ask.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to know. Like I said, I think you hear swinger, it's just like, oh, we just go, and everything goes. And that is definitely not the case. Tell me what a typical night at a sex swinger club would be like.
So, all the clubs have their own kind of rules. Some have dress codes, some don't. Some you go in, you sign in. If you're new, you get a tour of the place, and the rules, they explain all the rules to you. It's a good environment. There's dancing, there's like stripper poles, and you just kind of mingle at first. So I do. This was the funniest thing for me. Most people need a little liquid courage to really kind of get, so a couple hours in, then they're a little more mingling and stuff. And I'm not like that. My friends, the first time I went, they're like, okay, Stacy, most people need liquid courage. We know you don't, but you're going to have to wait a couple hours to really get into things. I'm like, oh my God, but it's true. But people get relaxed and talk to each other, and couples and singles, and they come up and say, hey, do you want to talk or do you want to drink? And if you say yes, great. If you say no, they're to walk away. And like I said, either the people around you won't let them bother you, or if you tell a volunteer, they'll escort them out if they're not respectful. And some people are more voyeuristic, and they'll go half naked. Well, the women do dress very, very sexy and provocative, which is fun. You don't see a lot of that in the guys, but sometimes you'll see nudity with the guys too. And there's just a lot of talking, getting to know each other. It's not like, hey, let's just go have sex. Sometimes I find with the single people, they'll be like, hey, do you want, I've been asked numerous, like, hey, do you want to go have sex? And I'm like, no. And if I say no, they're done, which has been so nice. But there really is, it's not just sex, especially for the couples. It's, you want some bit of connection. And then there's rooms you can go have private sex. There's rooms you can have public sex. So you do have all kinds of people, like voyeuristic, and those who want more privacy, those who want group sex and stuff. So it's more of an opportunity with like-minded people, and it's body positive too, which is so nice. I've never felt more beautiful than going to sex clubs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about, I think a few weeks ago, I ran into you, and you told me that you were organizing a gangbang. And again, the reason why I wanted to have you on this podcast was to just shed some light on things that people do, and they're not dirty and nasty. It's a life, as you say, a lifestyle that people lead, and it's comfortable for people. There's rules. It's not a free fall. So I'd like for you to just tell the audience about what that was about and what organizing a gangbang would involve, you know, just as an example of something that people do. And then let me ask you quickly, is that involved in the swinger life, or is that something that's more just on some other sexual spectrum?
I think it's the swinger lifestyle, but I do notice I've gone on some chats and stuff, and there's a lot of men and women who may not be necessarily swingers, but they're sex positive and they want to experience those things, and they'll organize gangbangs. In the swinger world, for me, at the clubs, they have theme nights like gangbang night and things like that. And a lot of times you'll go and it's not really happening. And my friends and I got to thinking, like, why isn't it happening? Because I would like to enjoy this. I want to try this someday. And the biggest thing, I think, is the female side, where we want to feel safe. We want to know we're respected. And you don't want just to go there and some rando guys come up and enjoy the gangbang. So we were like, let's plan this. Let's coordinate this. Let it and vet some guys like that we know are going to be safe, that'll wear condoms, that'll be respectful, and follow your consent rules and stuff. And we had a lot of good feedback for that, and ended up having one of the gangbang nights at the club and had the gangbang. I personally didn't, because some things happened, but because it was one of my fantasies. But yeah, women want to feel comfortable and safe, and so that was something that I like. When like-minded people get together and it's like, hey, how can we make some of this happen? Because a lot of people have these different fantasies. And so even just talking within a club, hey, let's plan this. Let's make sure this happens so other people can see it, like, and it's good. And especially the safe sex. That's the other thing. People are worried about STDs and stuff. The swinger community is the most safe I've been, because I've been with gentlemen who are like, refuse to wear condoms. I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? And there's condoms all over the sex club. People are adamant about wearing them. Good. So I love the sex positivity and the safety and all of that. It's really good.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's awesome. I want to talk to you briefly. I just want to let the audience know that you are a writer.
Yeah.
And I read you have, I think, 3 stories on, what is it, the Amazon?
It's Kindle Vella
Oh, it's the Kindle
on
Vella.
Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's a self-publishing service.
Okay. And I'm going to encourage people to really read the 3 stories that you wrote. I also would like to encourage people to read those stories and hit Stacy up and tell her to write more, because for some reason you got discouraged about writing. But I want to say that reading them was really insightful, because you talked about a lot more stuff than we're talking about now. You were talking more about the what, like being on a cross and
because there's impact play, and which that's a whole nother subject, and I discovered that.
I mean, we can touch those things quickly, but impact play and the person on the cross and being sweaty and being whipped and tortured and but again, the way that you presented it in the story, you one of the characters was just like, oh, she's cool, she just went through that, and that's just a part. And it's just an insight into the way that people interact. And again, it's not dirty, it's not shameful, it's fantasies, like you said about the gangbang, and it's things that people want to do. And the reason why this particular podcast is really important to me is just bringing light to people's sexual lives outside of the missionary position or doggy style or whatever. Right. And it's totally fine. You know what I mean? So I just would encourage people to go. She's under Victoria Foster. Go to, what is it?
Kindle Vella.
Kindle Vella, and read her story. And then if you do that, comment on our YouTube page and let us know what you think about it. Definitely follow Stacy and encourage her to continue to do that as well.
And the title is Den of Iniquity.
Den of Iniquity.
Which I love that title.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a den of things going on for sure. For sure, yeah. I noticed that, what do you think about pornography? And especially because it's changed from the pornography of the 70s and 80s, where it was this big studio production thing. And now there's just so many people and so many women and men that just do it for whatever. I mean, what are your views on the way pornography has shifted in society now?
I can't really speak to that too much because I personally am not big into pornography. Not that I don't like it. I have a very personal reason. I already have a very high sex drive, so if I watch pornography, it just kicks in an overdrive, and I don't need that. But I do like that they're starting to recognize that women, especially in regular porn, that men just bang, 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 and fuck them, and that's it. And it's all about the men. But women, we like different positions. We like, the consensual stuff where you're doing dom sub things, but we also like, finger us to get us, show women how to orgasm. And also with young men, it's been talking about, so young men learn, just fuck a woman, you're done. But showing the other perspective that, no, there's other things you need to do with a woman to get her to orgasm. So that shift is very helpful because the young people that are going off to have sex, that's what they're learning. And, it's not necessarily the best sex because that's not how it is. Yeah. So I do like that shift that's starting to come around.
That's good. Yeah, definitely. So with your ex-husband, you weren't necessarily sexually satisfied, And do you feel with the lifestyle that you got into, is that why you got into it, or were you looking for something more, or?
I got into exploring it because part of my thing, I was in a sexless marriage the last many number of years, like completely no affection, no anything. So I was starved for affection.
Wow.
And I enjoy sex, and I know it makes me feel good. So it was just the way things fell in place with meeting swingers and polyamorous people and explore who I am, what I like, especially for my next relationship. And for me, that's one thing I need. And I shouldn't have to give that up. No one should really have to give up a big part of themselves.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying everybody needs to be a swinger,
Right.
but it's good to explore your sexuality. And actually, I found out that I'm definitely bisexual too. I wouldn't have explored that before.
If you had to choose between the lifestyle of being a swinger or a polyamorous person, which would you choose, or would you, and why?
To me, I am not the cut and dry, because there's people, the polyamorous people are very into the love and the relationship, and they know that's what they want, and they won't give up anything. Swingers, they do it for fun and having sex. And for me, ideally, I would like a male partner and then a girlfriend. I would like a girlfriend, but I'm not sure. I think for me, I do have a hierarchical desire for a male in my life. So, and if that's all we wanted, I'd be fine with that. But most men are actually pretty cool with adding a woman in. But I don't want to add a woman just sexually. I want the relationship, the loving part of it too, which I don't think guys are threatened by that. And what you find is jealousy, and definitely in the swinger. And that's the part, and in poly, you got to temper your jealousy. And a lot of friends have talked about reading the book, The Ethical Slut, which is a really good book about in helping you, bring in the jealousy and stuff. And I find men are jealous because they see another man and it threatens their manhood. Women are jealous because either they feel not as beautiful, or someone's going to steal their man, like with the emotional and love connection. So it's very dynamic, and you have to really, talk about that with your partner and say, hey, I'm jealous of this person.
Yeah, I will say when I've heard stories of a woman hooking up with another woman and the guy is like just super pissed off, like that wouldn't bother me. But like you said, egotistically, if it was a guy, I would definitely go there. I guess in the same light sexually, if my partner was like, oh, let's bring in a woman, and I'd be like, yeah, totally, cool.
Right.
But like if you're like, yeah, let's bring this dude in, like I'm not gonna, just I wouldn't be comfortable with some dude just banging the crap out of my woman. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it is interesting, but with that said, there are, and this is what I'm bringing to light in this particular podcast episode, which is that there are men that don't mind it, and there are men that get off on it. You know what I mean? It's just about like understanding different dynamics in sexuality, especially as we evolve and get more open. And I'm hoping that, the people listening to this will just be understanding and be accepting and take in the information and just know, again, that, it might not be what you're into. You might be into just having sex with your wife or your girlfriend, missionary style, just a couple times a week. And that's fine for you. You might be into a very conservative way of being sexual. We don't fault you for that. And then the people who go beyond that, we don't want you to fault us for that either.
Right.
And I think really what the most important thing about this conversation today is bringing to light that there is a huge factor of respect, a huge factor of consent, a huge factor of needs being met. And it's not just a free-for-all, you know what I mean? And so, I appreciate you being here and coming in and sharing with our audience, your experience, explaining the lifestyle of swinging and polyamorous sexual relationships. And again, lastly, I'll just say I just want you all to go check out Stacy's stories. It's on
Kindle Vella, Amazon.
Under Victoria Foster.
Yep, and Den of Iniquity.
Den of Iniquity, and just read a story and just check it out, and I think it will be intriguing and it will make you want to read a couple more. She got a little frustrated and I didn't want to do more, but just if you do read it, just reach out to her and tell her to write more and just encourage her. Again, this episode was brought to you by sexenhancers.com. They have many different products. Men over 50 especially, that, our libido goes down. There's nothing to be ashamed about. We need a little help. So what I like about these products is they're all natural. They're less expensive than Viagra and whatever the other one is, Cialis. And just a really good product. Very soon we're going to have the owner of this company and inventor of these products on, and we're going to have a great conversation with him. So look forward to that. And we thank our producers, Justin and Naheem, for facilitating this podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time. As I always say, be good to yourself and be good to each other, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
This episode of the Aphrodisiac podcast was brought to you by sexenhancers.com.